So I'll begin by tearing off this obligatory plaster. My name is Alve Björk. I work for a company called Prover. We do design automation and formal verification of signaling systems for railway and metro, which means that technically I'm in the field of computer safety and not computer security. But as it happens in Swedish, these two terms coincide, so I still think it's okay for me to be here. I'm here to talk about the 2018 badge challenge. But 2018 is 4 years ago, so why am I only talking about this now? Well, the challenge was released during SecT Beyond on a small NFC tag, which looked like this, if you can see it. And then for a year, nobody solved it. Personally, I didn't even look at it. Then SecT Compute came around with its own badge challenge, but the old one was also re-released in poster form. And this caught my attention. I tried my hand at both challenges, but didn't get very far on either one. But then half a year later, around the time the Spring Pub would usually be held, it occurred to me that my new employer might not want to pay for my ticket for SecT next year. Because before then, I'd always bought a student ticket, which was cheap enough. So I figured maybe my best chance at getting back here was to earn a free ticket, and I gave the challenge another go, and eventually succeeded in solving it. And then COVID struck. And then last year I couldn't attend, but now it is finally go time. So let's look at the challenge. And by the way, this is like a typical slide. It's some code on the top and then output below it. I will not discuss the code at all. And also, I tend to display linear data in tabular form. So keep in mind that the shape is completely arbitrary and made to fit the slides. So this is all one string. The challenge had two parts. It begins with a text on community ecology from which some letters are missing. And then below that is a puzzle with the actual puzzle input within square brackets. I began by painstakingly figuring out what the missing letters ought to be, only later to find out that the text, the complete text, was available on the web page, so I could just have looked there. But anyway, this is what I found. And this contains too few vowels to be a transposition, and it's also not a Caesar cipher or other simple cipher I could think of. So moving on to the actual puzzle, it in turn had two parts. It began with a string of 4 symbols, and then a series of hexadecimal digits. Looking at the digits, it seemed clear that they should be grouped 2 and 2 and interpreted as bite-sized numbers. And staring at this long enough, after a while, a faint pattern emerged. So if we take the numbers and group them pairwise, like this, so here we have 3, 1, first pair, then 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, and so on. Then it seems that the numbers is composed of 2 interleaved subsequences, the one going, top of the major 3 rows, beginning 3, 2, 2, 1, 2, and so on, and the one beginning 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, and so on. And then in the bottom left, there is an outlier 20. More on this later. It should also be noted that there are exactly twice as many numbers as there were missing letters in the community ecology text. But this was about as far as I got the first time around. Then half a year later, I had another look at the missing letters. It occurred to me that if you have a text and a secret message you want to hide within the text, you would be incredibly lucky if the message happened to be a subsequence of the text, as you cannot control the letters. What you can control, however, are the positions of the letters, so I took another look at those. So these are the positions of the underscores in the community ecology text. And this sequence seems to grow in nice, small increments. So as it turns out, if you take the successive differences between the positions of the missing letters, including the space which separated the community ecology text from the puzzle, then the secret message is revealed. It says, there is a hint at secd.org/tag. This is a webpage which looked like this. It first says badge puzzle hint in glorious leet speak. Then it says sad squeezing skills spoil Samuel styler symbols in some kind of newspaper cutout font. And at the bottom it warns of off by 1 errors. I'm not sure I understood this hint, but one word jumped out, and that is squeezing, which hinted at compression playing a role. So one common compression technique which has a distinct advantage of me knowing about it is run length encoding. And then the idea is that if you read your text from left to right, whenever you come across a subsequence, which in this context is called a run, where you would be repeating yourself, then instead of doing so, you produce two numbers, an offset and a length, which refer back into the text you've already read. This seemed to fit with the puzzle because it starts with a string and then contains numbers which appear to come in pairs, which slowly grow. So if we take the first component of each pair to be an offset and the second component to be a length, and then expand the indices, we get the following. So here I've also included the indices of the initial segment. So 0, 1, 2, 3 refer to the first part of the string, and then we have a run of length 1 starting at the third index, and then a run of length 1 starting at the second index, and then a run of length 1 starting at the second index, that's 1, and then a run of length 1 starting at the first index, and then a run of length 2 starting at the second index, that's 1, 2. And then in the middle somewhere you can see a very long run, and that's a run of length 20. So to get from here to the message, you can take this vector and index it into itself until fixed point, and then index into the initial segment, which I think is pretty neat, but don't worry about it. The message turns out to be Morse code, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. Decoding from Morse code, we get something, which turns out to be a Caesar cipher with key 13, also known as ROT13, which gives a message, a single serve key for lost for something, something. I was stuck here for a while. It's not quite right, or it doesn't seem quite right, but it's also not completely wrong. But I couldn't find a step in which an error could have been introduced. And since the hint said something about sad skills, I figured that maybe there was an intentional mistake somewhere which I was supposed to figure out. But at this point, I decided to contact Matthias to see if I could get him to confirm that this was indeed a correct partial solution to the puzzle. And he was quick to reply and said that, well, there was indeed an unintentional mistake in the puzzle. So going back to the hexadecimal digits, there's a 14 in here somewhere. I think this one, which was supposed to be 14 decimal and not 14 hex. And as you know, 14 hex is 20 decimal, so this is our outlier, which is still an outlier, but of lesser magnitude. So if we patch this and then redo everything we did before, we get a slightly better message which says a single serve key for lost force, and then something which presumably is a key. Single serve seems to mean a one-time pad kind of thing. but it's a bit less clear what lost fourths refer to. However, there aren't many things it could be. So the missing letters could be considered lost, and lost fourths could mean a fourth of the lost letters. The length of the missing letters does not quite divide by 4 evenly into the length of the key, but it's quite close. So to me, there are only a few ways, or a few obvious ways, to divide a string into 4 parts. And as for the key, I could only see 3 options, either addition, subtraction by the key, or subtraction from the key, possibly with an added constant term. It turned out that you should take every 4th letter starting from the 4th one and then subtract from the key, and that yielded the final answer, which was free entry 2. So this is what the complete solution script looked like, which is in Dialog APL, and I think turned out pretty succinct. You can see the patch in here, like there. And then I want to also say something about the corrected version of the problem available on the web page. It's almost the same, except that it is basic Cipher encoded, of course. No patching needs to be done. But curiously enough, in the last deciphering step, you have to add a constant factor of 12. And then you get a slightly different answer, which is free entry XC, where the XC, I think, refers to SecD compute. And that's all. Thank you for listening.